"She's sick," Mom said as she counted my money. I stood silently, watching my tip money disappear into her designer purse for Grandma's life-saving treatment in Europe. Again. I'd worked double shifts at the hospital for 3 months to scrape together this $1,200. My shoulders ached from lifting patients, my feet throbbed in my worn-out nursing shoes, and my social life was non-existent. But Grandma needed this specialized treatment only available in Switzerland. At least that's what Mom had told everyone for years. "You're such a good granddaughter, Caitlin," Mom said, patting my hand while slipping the cash into her wallet, the new Gucci one that had appeared last month right after my previous contribution. "Your sacrifice is going to make such a difference. The doctors say we're getting close to a breakthrough." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. This month's contribution meant I'd have to defer my student loan payment again. The late fees were piling up, but what choice did I have? Family comes first, especially when someone's life is hanging in the balance. "When's the next treatment?" I asked the same question I asked every time. "Next week," Mom answered smoothly, the same answer she gave every time, without ever specifying a date. "Your father's sending his contribution tomorrow. Between the two of you, we should have enough for this round." She stood up, straightening her new blouse, a blouse I couldn't afford even with my employee discount at the mall. For a moment, a question flickered in my mind. How was Mom affording designer clothes while supposedly funneling thousands into Grandma's care? But I pushed the thought away. Mom was under stress, managing Grandma's medical crisis while keeping the family together. If a few nice things helped her cope, who was I to judge? "I've got to run," she said, checking her watch, another recent acquisition that looked suspiciously expensive. "Book club tonight, and I'm already late." As she walked to the door, she turned back. "Oh, I almost forgot. Grandma sent you another voice message. She sounds stronger this month." Mom pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a bit longer than necessary, and handed it to me. Grandma's voice, thin and wavering, came through the speaker. "Caitlin, honey, thank you for helping with my treatments. The doctors say I'm improving, but there's still a long way to go. I miss you so much." The message sounded strangely similar to last month's, almost word for word. I blinked back tears, pushing away the odd feeling of déjà vu. The message was short, like always. Mom explained that talking was still difficult for Grandma, and international calls were expensive. I handed the phone back, gut twisting with worry and something else I couldn't quite name. "Can't we try a video call?" I asked, not for the first time. "Even just for a minute?" Mom's expression shifted subtly. A flash of irritation quickly masked by concern. "We've been through this, Caitlin. The hospital's Wi-Fi is too unstable for video, and the time difference makes scheduling nearly impossible. Besides, do you really want Grandma to see how worried you look right now? It would only stress her." The guilt hit me immediately, just as it always did when Mom questioned my devotion to Grandma. "No, of course not." "You're right. I know it's hard," Mom said, her voice softening. "But questioning everything doesn't help. It just shows you don't trust me to handle this properly." She gave me a wounded look that made me feel 2 inches tall. "After everything I've sacrificed to coordinate her care." "I trust you," I said quickly. "I just miss her." Mom's smile returned. "That's my good girl. Tell her I love her next time you call," I said. Mom nodded, gave me a quick hug, and left, her heels clicking down the hallway of my small apartment building. I collapsed onto my second-hand couch, exhaustion washing over me. I'd give anything to see Grandma, but Mom insisted the stress of visitors would be too much in her fragile condition. The last time I'd seen her was 3 years ago, before the diagnosis that changed everything, a diagnosis I'd never actually seen on paper, from doctors whose names I didn't know, at a hospital I couldn't name. A strange thought crossed my mind. In all these years, I'd never seen a single medical bill, a doctor's report, or even a photo of Grandma in Switzerland. When I'd asked about paperwork once, Mom had shown me a folder of what looked like statements and medical forms, all in German or French, languages I couldn't read. She'd flipped through them quickly before putting them away, saying she didn't want me to be overwhelmed by the technical details. But that was ridiculous. Mom was handling everything. Why would she lie about something so serious? My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Did you give your mom the money for Grandma? Our relationship had been reduced to these transactions, coordinating our financial support for a grandmother we weren't allowed to visit. Yes, I texted back. Just now. Dad, have you ever asked which hospital Grandma's in? There was a long pause before his reply came. Your mother handles those details. Best not to stress her with questions. I frowned at the response. When had we all become so afraid of asking Mom simple questions? Good point, I texted back, taking the path of least resistance as usual. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling, my eyes tracing the water stain that had grown over the past year. Just like my debt. The next day at work, I shuffled between patients in the geriatric ward, checking IVs and dispensing medications. My mind was elsewhere, wondering if Grandma was comfortable in her Swiss hospital room, if she had nurses as dedicated as our team. Caitlin, you look dead on your feet, said Gloria, the charge nurse. When's the last time you took a day off? I shrugged. Can't remember. You should use some of your vacation time, she suggested. It's been building up for months. Can't afford to, I said automatically, then winced at my own transparency. Gloria's eyes narrowed. Your grandmother's treatments still eating up all your money? I nodded. Everyone at work knew about my situation. I'd picked up so many extra shifts that my coworkers had started a small donation fund last Christmas to help out. The memories still brought tears to my eyes. Their generosity had covered one of Grandma's treatments that month. Have you ever thought about going to Switzerland yourself? Gloria asked. See your grandmother in person? The question caught me off guard. Mom says visitors would compromise her immune system. Gloria frowned. For 3 years straight? That's unusual, even for immunocompromised patients. What hospital is she in? I'm not sure of the name, I admitted, suddenly uncomfortable. Mom handles all the details. So you've been sending money for 3 years to a hospital you can't name, for treatments you can't describe, to doctors you've never spoken to? Gloria's medical training was clearly triggering professional skepticism. I felt a flush of defensiveness. It's an experimental treatment program. Very exclusive. So exclusive there's no website? No phone number for family to call directly? Gloria pressed, then softened her tone at my stricken expression. I'm sorry, honey. I'm sure everything's fine. I just hate seeing you work yourself to death for something so vague. I mumbled, suddenly eager to change the subject as we moved on to our next patient. But Gloria's questions had planted a seed of doubt I couldn't easily dismiss. That night, I couldn't sleep. Gloria's questions had stirred something I'd been suppressing. Why didn't I know which hospital Grandma was in? Why hadn't I asked for photos or tried to arrange a video call? The voice messages came through Mom's phone, never directly to me. I sat up in bed, grabbing my laptop. I tried searching for Swiss hospitals specializing in treatments for autoimmune disorders, what Mom had told me was Grandma's diagnosis. There were several, but without knowing which one Grandma was in, I couldn't narrow it down. I considered calling Mom to ask for details, but something held me back. The last time I'd pressed for information, she'd burst into tears, asking how I could doubt her when she was barely keeping it together for Grandma's sake. The argument had ended with me apologizing profusely and promising to be more supportive. I'd even increased my monthly contribution as a way to make amends. No, I couldn't go through that again. It was after midnight, and she'd be annoyed at being woken up. Or at least that's what I told myself as I closed my laptop and tried to sleep. The mall was crowded for a Wednesday afternoon. I'd switched shifts with another nurse to have a rare weekday off, planning to catch up on errands and maybe treat myself to a coffee that didn't come from the hospital cafeteria. I was passing by Nordstrom when I spotted a familiar coat, burgundy wool with distinctive gold buttons. My mom had one just like it, purchased last winter. She'd mentioned it was from a small European designer, exclusive and expensive. The woman wearing it was standing at the cosmetics counter, her back to me. Same height as Mom, same sleek blonde bob. My heart raced. Mom was supposed to be at work, managing the accounting office where she'd been employed for 20 years. I moved closer, curiosity overriding my fatigue. As I approached, the woman turned slightly, examining a lipstick sample. She wasn't my mother. I exhaled, feeling foolish. Of course it wasn't Mom. She was at work, responsible as always, balancing her job with caring for a sick parent across the ocean. I continued past the cosmetics section toward the food court, mentally calculating how much I could afford to spend on lunch. The answer was depressing. As I rounded the corner, I froze. Sitting at a table in the center of the food court was an elderly woman with familiar silver hair, wearing a light blue sweater I'd given her for Christmas 4 years ago. She was laughing, looking healthier than I'd seen her in years. Grandma. My purse slipped from my shoulder, hitting the floor with a thud. This couldn't be real. Grandma was in Switzerland, fighting for her life, barely able to record short voice messages. But there she was, eating Chinese food and looking perfectly fine. And sitting across from her, wearing a new outfit I'd never seen before, was my mother. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. They hadn't seen me yet, engrossed in their conversation, smiling and animated. Mom reached across the table to pat Grandma's hand, the same gesture she'd used when taking my money yesterday. As I watched, Grandma's smile faltered slightly. Margaret, are you sure Caitlin can't join us for dinner this weekend? It's been months since I've seen her. She's working double shifts again, Mom replied smoothly. You know how dedicated she is to her patients. We're lucky if we can get her to answer a text these days. Grandma looked disappointed but nodded. Well, tell her I miss her. And remind her about my birthday next month. A cold wave washed over me. 3 years of double shifts. 3 years of declining invitations, living in a rundown apartment, eating ramen while my credit score tanked. 3 years of worry and sacrifice and guilt when I occasionally splurged on a $4 coffee. All for a lie. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of them. Evidence. I needed evidence because some part of me still couldn't believe what I was seeing. Then I walked toward their table, each step heavier than the last. Mom saw me first. Her smile vanished, replaced by shock and something else, calculation. I'd seen that look before when she was figuring out how to explain away a problem. Caitlin. Grandma exclaimed, genuine delight in her voice. What a wonderful surprise. She stood up to embrace me, but I stepped back, my eyes locked on my mother. How's Switzerland, Grandma? I asked, my voice shaking. Confusion crossed Grandma's face. Switzerland? I've never been. Mom's face drained of color. Caitlin, I can explain what Mom? That Grandma isn't dying? That there are no treatments? That you've been taking my money for what exactly? People at nearby tables were staring now, but I couldn't stop. 3 years of pent-up sacrifice boiled over. Do you have any idea what I've gone through? The shifts I've worked? The debt I'm in? All for a lie. My voice cracked. Grandma looked between us, bewildered. What's going on, Margaret? Mom stood up, grabbing her purse. Not here, Caitlin. We'll discuss this at home. No, I said firmly. We'll discuss it right now. Tell Grandma what you've been doing. Tell her how you've been using her illness to take money from me and Dad for years. Grandma's hand went to her throat. Margaret, what is she talking about? Mom's eyes darted around, assessing her options. Mom hasn't been well, she said to Grandma, her voice slipping into the soothing tone I knew too well. Caitlin's been working too hard, and she's confused. No. My hands balled into fists. No more lies. Grandma, Mom's been telling me you're dying in a Swiss hospital. She's collected thousands of dollars from me for treatments that don't exist. Grandma sank back into her chair, her face ashen. Margaret, tell me this isn't true. But Mom's expression said everything. Her mask slipped, revealing not remorse but annoyance at being caught. "You weren't supposed to be here today," she said to me, as if that explained everything. "That's your response? That I wasn't supposed to catch you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom glanced at her watch, her new Swiss watch. I realized with fresh anger. "We should go somewhere private. People are staring." "Let them," I said. "I'm done keeping your secrets." "How could you do this to me? To Dad? To Grandma?" Grandma reached for my hand, her fingers trembling. "I had no idea, sweetheart. No idea at all." I believed her. The shock and hurt in her eyes couldn't be faked. "How much?" Grandma asked Mom, her voice hard in a way I'd never heard before. "How much have you taken from my granddaughter?" Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "It's not what you think. The money went to good use." "Good use?" I echoed. "Like your new watch? Your designer clothes? Your weekly spa appointments?" Mom's eyes flashed. "I deserved some compensation for taking care of an elderly parent. Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed?" Grandma flinched as if slapped. "Taking care of me? I've been independent all these years. I thought the only help I needed was with my banking." Something inside me snapped. "Taking care of." Grandma lives independently in her own house. The house she owns outright. The house with the garden she tends herself. She needs help, Mom insisted. Groceries, doctor's appointments, managing her finances. "I manage my own finances just fine," Grandma interrupted, her voice ice cold. "At least I thought I did." A terrible suspicion bloomed. "What does that mean, Grandma?" Mom tried to interject, but Grandma silenced her with a look. "Your mother has been my power of attorney since your grandfather died. She handles my banking, my investments. She sends me monthly statements." Her voice trailed off, understanding dawning. Statements she could easily have created herself. The implications hit me like a physical blow. "Mom? What have you done with Grandma's money?" Mom wouldn't meet my eyes, and that was answer enough. I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling Dad." "Don't." Mom lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. "He deserves to know." "How much have you taken from him for these fake treatments?" Mom's silence was damning. I dialed Dad's number, and to my surprise, he answered on the first ring. "Caitlin? Is everything okay?" "No," I said, watching Mom's face. "Nothing is okay. Dad, I'm at Westfield Mall with Mom and Grandma." "Yes, Grandma. The one who's supposedly in Switzerland." There was a long pause. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he finally said, his voice flat. While we waited, none of us spoke. Grandma seemed to have aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Mom kept checking her phone, her leg bouncing with nervous energy. I stood guard, afraid she might bolt. Dad arrived, his face grim. He'd clearly broken speed limits to get there so quickly. He looked at Grandma, healthy and very much not in Switzerland, and turned to Mom. "How long?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. "Richard, I can explain how long." Each word was etched in stone. Mom's shoulders slumped. 3 years. Dad closed his eyes briefly. "The treatments, the specialists, the progress reports, all lies?" Mom nodded. "Where's the money, Margaret?" This from Grandma, who'd been silently watching the confrontation. "I needed it," Mom said defensively. "For investments. For our future. It will all pay off, you'll see." Dad laughed without humor. "Show me these investments." "Now." Mom's hesitation told us everything. "There aren't any, are there?" I said, the final piece clicking into place. "You spent it all." "Not all of it," Mom protested, but weakly. "How much, Margaret?" Dad pressed. "How much have you taken from us?" "From your mother?" Mom mumbled something inaudible. "What was that?" Dad leaned closer. "About 200,000, she said, barely audible. My knees buckled. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling. $200,000. More money than I might see in a decade of nursing. Dad's face went blank, the same expression he'd worn at his father's funeral. "We're going to the police." "You can't." Mom cried. I'm your wife. She's your mother-in-law. And I'm your daughter, I said, finding my voice. And you've stolen my future. The next few weeks passed in a blur of police reports, bank statements, and tears. So many tears. We learned the full extent of Mom's deception. She'd been siphoning money not only from Dad and me, but from Grandma's accounts as well. The disease had been entirely fabricated, those shaky voice messages recorded by Mom herself, digitally altered to sound like Grandma. The German and French medical documents she'd shown me were travel brochures and restaurant menus with official-looking headers pasted on them. The money had funded a lifestyle none of us knew about: luxury vacations described to Dad as visits to check on Grandma's care, expensive jewelry, a secret apartment in another city, and, most devastating of all, gifts for a man she'd been seeing for 2 years. Dad moved out of their house the same day, taking only his clothes and personal items. He was staying with me now, sleeping on my couch while we both tried to make sense of the wreckage of our lives. Grandma, despite being the most financially devastated, showed remarkable resilience. She'd moved in with her sister temporarily while we sorted out her finances and determined how much Mom had taken from her accounts. As for me, I took a week off work for the first time in years. Gloria had hugged me when I explained what happened, not saying "I told you so," even though she'd clearly suspected something was wrong. I sat now at my small kitchen table, facing a stack of bills and a spreadsheet tracking what Mom owed me. Dad was at a lawyer's office, discussing our options for restitution, though we all knew Mom likely had little left to repay. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Please, let me explain. Meet me for coffee? Mom, I stared at the message, a familiar guilt reflex almost making me agree automatically. But then I remembered standing in my apartment, watching her pocket my hard-earned money with practiced ease. No, I typed back. Any explanation should be given to the police. I blocked the number before she could respond. Across the table, a stack of loan deferment paperwork waited for my signature. The financial hole would take years to climb out of. Years of sacrifice to make up for the sacrifices I'd already made for a lie. A knock at the door interrupted my calculations. I opened it to find Grandma, holding a manila envelope. May I come in? She asked, her voice stronger than it had been at the mall. I stepped aside, and she entered, looking around my shabby apartment with new understanding. You've been living like this while giving your money to your mother, she said, not a question but a confirmation. I nodded, embarrassed by the water stains, the second-hand furniture, the general air of making do. Grandma sat at my kitchen table, placing the envelope in front of her. I've been going through my financial records, trying to understand what Margaret did. The formal use of Mom's name wasn't lost on me. Grandma had always called her Maggie before. I found something I think you should see. She opened the envelope and removed a stack of papers. These are transfers from my investment account to Margaret's personal account, authorized with my power of attorney. I glanced at the statements, not wanting to see more evidence of Mom's betrayal. But Grandma pushed a specific page toward me. Look at the memo line on these transfers. I peered at the fine print. Each transfer, tens of thousands of dollars, had the same notation: for Caitlin's education trust. My head snapped up. What education trust? Grandma's eyes were sad. That's just it. There isn't one. Your grandfather and I had set up a college fund for you when you were born. I thought Margaret was moving those funds to a different investment vehicle as you grew up. But now, she took it all, I finished, a fresh wave of betrayal washing over me. My college fund. That's why she pushed me to take out student loans instead. Grandma nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm so sorry, Caitlin. I should have paid closer attention. I trusted my daughter, and she betrayed that trust in the worst way. I reached across the table and took her hand. It's not your fault, Grandma. She squeezed my fingers. I've spoken with my lawyer. I'm revoking Margaret's power of attorney, obviously. And I've made arrangements to help you with your student loans. Grandma, no, you don't have to, I want to, she interrupted firmly. That money was always meant for your education. Margaret stole from both of us. I swallowed hard, overwhelmed by her generosity after everything she'd been through. There's something else, Grandma continued. I've amended my will. Margaret will receive only the minimum required by law. The rest will be divided between you and a trust to cover my care as I age, my actual care, not the fictional care your mother invented. Are you sure? I asked. She's still your daughter. Grandma's expression hardened. And you're my granddaughter. A granddaughter who worked double shifts and lived in near poverty to help someone she thought was dying. Margaret doesn't deserve your loyalty, but I intend to be worthy of it. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lifting. Not just the financial burden, but the constant pressure of family obligation that Mom had weaponized against me. What happens now? I asked. Now, Grandma said, a hint of her old spark returning, we rebuild. Without lies, without manipulation. Just honesty and whatever love can survive this betrayal. She looked around my apartment again. And perhaps we start by finding you a better place to live. I managed a small smile. One without water stains would be nice. Grandma's answering smile was bittersweet. That's a promise I intend to keep. 2 months later, Dad and I stood in the courthouse hallway, waiting for Mom's sentencing hearing. She'd pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and theft, faced with overwhelming evidence once financial investigators had traced the money. Dad looked older now, gray touching his temples that hadn't been there before. You don't have to be here, he said. No one would blame you for staying away. I shook my head. I need to see this through. The door opened, and a court officer called us in. Mom sat at the defendant's table, wearing clothes I'd never seen before, simple, without her usual designer labels. Her attorney had advised her to look humble for sentencing. As the judge entered and proceedings began, I found myself studying the woman who had raised me. The woman who had taught me that family comes first, who had then exploited that very principle to steal my future. When it was time for victim impact statements, Dad declined to speak. But I walked to the podium, my prepared statement in hand. Your Honor, I began, my mother taught me that sacrifice for family is the highest virtue. She raised me to believe that no cost is too great when someone you love is suffering. I paused, looking directly at Mom. I lived that teaching faithfully, working double shifts, deferring loan payments, living in substandard conditions, all to help my grandmother, who I believed was fighting for her life. Mom looked down at the table. I don't regret the values I was taught. I regret only that the person who taught them to me didn't believe in them herself. My voice remained steady, even as tears threatened. My mother stole more than money from me. She stole years of my life. Peace of mind. Trust in the one person a daughter should always be able to trust. The courtroom was silent. I'm a nurse, Your Honor. I spend my days helping people heal. I don't know if my relationship with my mother can ever heal from this betrayal, but I do know that true healing requires accountability. I stepped away from the podium, returning to my seat beside Dad. He squeezed my hand silently. When the judge announced a sentence of 4 years in prison plus restitution, Mom finally broke down. As officers led her away, she looked back at me, mouthing, I'm sorry. Too little, too late. Outside the courthouse, Grandma waited by her car, a modest sedan that had replaced her previous luxury vehicle, sold to help cover legal fees. It's done, I told her. She nodded, opening her arms to me. As I stepped into her embrace, I felt something shift inside. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. Let's go home, Grandma said softly. Home. My new apartment where Grandma had been staying since selling her house. A fresh start for both of us. As we drove away from the courthouse, I glanced back one last time. Some wounds might never fully heal, but at least now the bleeding had stopped. And sometimes, that's enough to start building a new life, one built on truth instead of lies. Was I wrong to press charges against my own mother? Would you have found a way to forgive the betrayal, or would you have demanded justice like I did?